What are some small health habits that can have a huge impact in your life? Today's guest, Christiane Schroeter, food and health coach, has transformed the lives of thousands of students. Listen to today's episode to get some ideas that you can start implementing right away. Welcome to the Courage to Be podcast. I'm your host, Tanya Vasallo. And each week, I will bring you amazing guests so that you can tap into the courage to break out of old patterns and live your soul's purpose. Before we get into this episode, if by the end you enjoyed it, please follow, rate, review, and share the podcast so we can reach more people. Because here's the thing, I'm on a mission to close the gender gap in the podcasting world so that more and more women's voices are heard. If you feel that this is something you value too, then please take action by rating, reviewing, following, and sharing the podcast. We can only do this together. Check out the link in the show notes to see how this is done. And make sure to stay until the end to claim some free gifts I have for you. Welcome to the Courage to Be podcast, where we have powerful conversations to transform our life and our business. And today we have Christiane Schroeter with us. Did I pronounce it right? I'm like trying to say the right last name.
Thank you, Tanya. It's absolutely amazing. And I adore that you are asking about the pronunciation because I'm definitely not making it easy.
But I love it. So tell us a little bit about you, Christiane. You're German, you live in the States. What's your journey been like and what are you up to? You know, I know you're in the health business and health and wellness and helping people become healthy in this world, which we need. So share with us a little bit with our listeners what your story is all about.
Awesome. Yeah, so I have been living in California since 15 years. I lived in the Midwest before, where I also earned my PhD and my master's degree, or my PhD in health economics, focusing on obesity and figuring out how we can maybe change prices to directly look at positive benefits with regard to body weight and exercise. And that was also my entrance, so to speak, in the United States. I was a Fulbright scholar, came to the United States on that Fulbright scholarship from Germany. And I've been living in the United States overall for more than half of my life. Really, you know, if you think about the courage to be, I took the courage from Germany to leave my home country and be in the United States. And the name of my company is Hello Happiness, because as soon as I came to the United States, I felt I was entering my personal happy nest. I'm really happy here, and I'm feeling that I'm now empowering others to reach their own happiness. So I'm a full-time professor at the university, but I also coach and teach fitness classes and help others getting into their best selves.
That is awesome. There's so many different things I want to detangle here, starting with what is health economics? Like, can you give us more? Because that sounds very smart to me. Like, it's like up here. I'm like, how do you detangle and, I don't know, synthesize that for us?
Good. Yeah, that's an amazing question. So if you think about regular economics, what comes to your mind, Tanya?
Numbers, exchange of value, money, you know, it's, yeah, exchange of value and money and numbers, really. That's what.
Good. So that is amazing. So now basically you're applying numbers, value, money, and you're applying to the health space. So think about what makes us healthy is maybe healthy eating, maybe exercise, maybe, you know, changing some habits around in the house. And all of this, of course, is something that at the end of the day will make us feel better. So health economics looks a lot at the prices, the income that we get from our day-to-day jobs. We also, of course, have mortality. So there's a price associated with just living, and there is a cost whenever you get ill as well. So health economics basically puts numbers, exchange, and anything like that on your personal well-being, as well as the cost of illness and health. And it really investigates that. So if you think about the past, let's say 3 years, you know, of COVID, there was a lot of health economics that went into that. Like, how much does a pandemic cost, for instance? How do we value the cost of productivity versus people maybe being out sick in the workplace. So all of this is health economics, and you're actually probably using it more than what you think, but now I gave you a word that actually puts this into a context.
I love that, because thanks for the explanation. I think it's these things that we don't think about. Obviously you do, because that's what you specialize in, but it's definitely the numbers that we don't think about. Like, how much is it really going to cost us to do preventative, like taking care of our body versus having to go to the doctor, for example, or like taking care of our health throughout all these years and these decades. Will it shorten our lifespan, or is that going to cost ourselves and our family a lot more in like disability, or when we're getting to our elder years, and what will our health look at that point? This is fascinating. I'm glad that you brought that up. So what were some of the discoveries that you found as you came and started studying health economics? Because you're coming from Germany. My guess is that you came to the States thinking that you were just going to use your scholarship, study here, but then you ended up staying for 15 plus years. So what happened there? Like, what were some of the discoveries? Like, I'd like to hear about some of these discoveries within health economics that inspired you, and how you ended up choosing to stay here.
Yeah, I love that question, because I always say I packed a suitcase and left to study abroad. So I was a typical exchange student, and then actually ended up staying. So that suitcase became my home and my family. Now I have children and I live here, and I'm finding really that decision back then, which really did take a lot of courage, completely changed the path of my life. So a couple of things I want to say about this. So first, we might all have that inner desire to do something different in our life, right? So the reason why I really went abroad is because I'm very passionate about languages. I studied French, English, and also Spanish in Germany. And I knew that I wanted to do something with languages. I wasn't sure whether I should do it full time. So I wanted to go abroad. The other thing that was the driving factor, and that's factor number 2, is that was not super healthy. So I struggled all along with digestive issues. I thought about becoming a dietitian, studying foods and nutrition, doing something in that wellness food space. And so I was motivated by my passion, worked in Germany in the dietitian framework in a wellness clinic, and then all of a sudden realized that, well, I'm still passionate about those languages. So let's maybe go abroad, so I can get my passion for, in this case, English covered, but I also want to study more about food and nutrition. And when I then came to the United States, I learned more about food and nutrition and how it impacts our day-to-day purchasing behavior, coming back to that economic decision making, and how you can really change positive habits into motion. So that is really then what I felt was expanding what I had learned in Germany. So I actually transformed my life to a healthier and happier state, which is, again, the name of my company, Hello Happiness. So I found new foods that I had not met previously in Germany, changed my habits with regard to working out. So if you think about exercise, United States, now I live in California, it is actually much more part of your daily habits than it had been in Germany. So, which is also part of health economics, if you think about it. So if you think about your decisions you make on a daily basis, you're kind of like creating maybe a schedule and making it economical for yourself to add in little wellness tidbits here and there. So in the United States, schools have much more emphasis, for instance, on PE, but many people belong to a rec center, or they form certain communities of working out together. So I really started embracing this in the United States. And then I became very passionate about obesity. Again, I went to the Midwest and I lived for a while in the South, which are definitely the hot seats in the United States with regard to not necessarily eating super healthy or moving a lot. So I saw the impact of obesity on the population there. And that really triggered my thinking that I need to research this. Why are people in these areas so obese? Why are they struggling on a daily basis with overweight, with poor nutrition, as well as wellness factors? And that's really how it all came together. My digestive issues improved. I changed a lot of habits in my life, and I felt that I wanted to research more of decision factors of population.
That's awesome. I love hearing that you took your issues that you have in your own healing and wanting to learn and explore more about that, and then kind of study and analyze these other locations, like with obesity. I'm curious about that. Like, what did you discover, or were you able to inspire people in these communities? Because there's so many questions. Like, I want to go back to both of us being from Europe, like there's other questions, but I'll come back to that one. So let's start with the obesity, the people that you found, in the States, living in the Midwest, living in the South, that have more issues. Like, what kind of solutions have you thought for them? You took care of yourself, but now it's like, okay, now it's time to take it out to the population, to other people, and inspire other people. What showed up for you along that path, Christiane?
Great question. So if you kind of like think about daily decision factors, we could kind of break it down into external factors and internal factors, right? So external factors being prices, because we personally don't have an impact on prices. So we're just looking at them. We can't impact them. So they are external to our lives, but also the environment that we live in, right? So you might live in a location that's not necessarily easy to exercise in. You might live in a location where fruits and vegetables have higher prices. And so that might already be an obstacle for yourself to live healthier, to make good food choices, etc. So now maybe your internal motivation, that's your, you want to live healthier, you want to eat healthy, might be triggering like, I need a change. So when I lived in Arkansas, which is in the South where I lived, I started researching, okay, so what can we do in this area here? So maybe there was a lot of rice production where I lived in Arkansas. Started researching, all right, can we use rice in ways that is maybe in a healthy way? So I started looking at recipes, the most easiest accessible one. But I also started researching, are there fruits and vegetables grown in this area that we could maybe just make more accessible? And meaning more accessible is we don't just look at grocery stores, we also look at ways that builds community, where we have exchange, where we have social connection. Because if you look at studies in economics that connect your lifespan and your mortality to a factor, the number one factor is always social connection. So if you think about mortality and you were to research, and there's a long Harvard study that has researched people for decades, what has increased their longevity, it is always the social connection. It's the quality and the quantity of their social ties. We call this in economics. So if you think about a farmer's market, you're getting the healthier food options, the fruits and vegetables, and maybe other local little goodies right there. You can exchange words with the farmers. You can build that connection right there. Maybe you're meeting friends or your neighbors, or maybe you're meeting new people. You have a conversation about a recipe, how you can use those foods right there. That alone will already increase your lifespan, because you're not just sitting at home doing what you do every day, but you're getting out and you're engaging in this community right there. So when I lived in Arkansas, actually helped and created a farmer's market. And I can tell you at the beginning, people were very curious about fruits and vegetables, and absolutely adored the Southern way of living, because they were very open to me. And I will tell you a funny story. For instance, we had a farmer that brought in cucumbers, and I purchased some of the cucumbers that I wanted to use in a salad. So cut up the cucumbers, use some cold rice, and mix the cucumbers with some mango, with some bell peppers to create that color and the texture, etc. And it's called a Mediterranean rice salad. And the people saw me purchasing the cucumbers and had never seen a cucumber before. And afterwards asked me how I used it. And I said, well, I cut it up raw and put it in my rice salad. And then they told me, well, we didn't know what to do with it, so we just fried it, which is very typical in the South. So they have what's called a fry daddy, which is a tool, it's a gadget you just have on your kitchen countertop. And I so embraced that they shared that with me, because to us, putting something out there that you're not familiar with is also part of this internal factor that I talked about, which is part of your food culture. Given that fried food is very common in the South, maybe asking somebody else, how can I make my food culture richer? Maybe instead of frying it, I'm trying it raw. And maybe that's something new that make my food culture even more multifaceted, and maybe even trigger a little wellness piece in my life. So in Germany, of course, we also cook vegetables a lot, but we also eat salads. And so I shared that little German tidbit with people in Arkansas, and they came back and they said, I didn't even know you could eat it raw. This was really cool. So that was a little success factor right there.
That is awesome. I love that story. And especially for both of us coming from different cultures and coming here to the States, just hearing these things, it reminds me, there's a story here for me personally in the farmer's market in Santa Fe in New Mexico, that they sell they're Japanese peppers. They're called shishito peppers, which are very similar to these peppers that we get in Spain, padron peppers, which they also sell here. And I wasn't quite sure how they were going to cook. Like I saw them there. I'm like, oh my God, they look very similar to the ones we have in Spain, but how are they cooking it? And I think that's such an important way of accessing food and trying new things and being brave to try new things. That's not the way you were brought up or the only thing that because when they would cook the shishito peppers with olive oil and a little bit of garlic, I was like, oh, and they'd have samples so you could try them. And then you try it and you're like, okay, I'm going to try cooking them this way too. So I think that's brilliant that you did that, Christiana, that you brought that there and are encouraging people to be able to create their, just to spice up their own, no pun intended, but spice up their own cultural aspects with food and their health and how they deal with health, because we are a melting pot. This country is a melting pot, but we can be very attached to our ways of eating and our backgrounds. My closest friend is Dominican, and they have their own ways of eating, in the Dominican Republic. And we just all have our own ways. And I think it's very important. I love too that you talked about the social aspect and this study in Harvard, because it has been proven, these people that are centenarians, Japan, Italy, just all these different locations, one of the highest factors is, they take a lot of things into consideration, health, like the food, how much exercise, but I didn't know that the social aspect of it was the most important. And it kind of makes sense that it would kind of trump everything else. Like you can maybe think about, I don't know what the percentage is for the French, for example, but we all know the French eating their bread and the croissants and their cheeses, that you would think everyone dies much sooner or that they're not as healthy, but maybe it's because of the social connection too, or even in Spain, I see my own country. I just came back from being there for 3 weeks, and it just seeing the culture is so different. And I'm curious for you, when you came to the States and seeing, because you mentioned before that you started exercising and doing different things that you weren't doing in Germany, like maybe like the going to the gym and all that stuff is not as, or maybe it wasn't as popular, because you've also been in the States for 15 years. It's the same as for me. I've been here over 20 years. So I've seen some health habits starting to shift over in Europe, back in my country. Like I'm seeing more people exercising or jogging and biking and embracing these kind of things. Whereas before I thought like, oh no, this is just an obsession in the States. But how have you seen that, or what have you seen in the progression comparing both of the countries, like for you, Germany and the State? Because you're multicultural now, you have both of those sides. Like what have been some of the benefits or the negatives and the benefits that you've seen in both countries?
That's a really great question. So I've been living in California since 15 years. And the reason why I always trigger that in my mind is because and this is a fun fact to the audience, I started this job in California, moving from Arkansas while I was pregnant. So I started on a new tenure track position at the university here while I was pregnant. So speaking about, how you combine the best things in life and how they all come together, because I wanted to have children, I wanted to move, I wanted to start a new job, and whoops, there, I started a new job being pregnant 5 months. So this is a fun little fact, and came to the United States 24 years ago, actually, to study here in the graduate program. So when I left Germany at that time, and I love that you bring this up, it was not very common to be member of a gym or recreation center. And in general, PE or physical education or sport or whatever you call it, we have that on our schedule in school. It wasn't really that there was an organized activity for children in terms of team sports. So you could enroll in it, but I would say, and that's something I very much see now because I have teenage daughters, there was kind of this time frame between, let's maybe say 13 till 18, to where there's a little bit of like a gray space, gray area. What do you do then as a teenager in the exercise frame? And unfortunately, as a health coach, that's also the most formative one in your life, to where you're creating good habits during that particular time frame. So I arrived here while I was still a student, and I embraced that the university had a recreation center, and I embraced how students were just going there every day, and they met up and went there, speaking about the social aspect, attended classes. They were going there, whether it was for yoga or for cardio or just for sitting there and studying. And it just became part of my life then too, to kind of create that daily habit in going there. At the same time, what I also noticed as a German, my very first purchase in the United States was actually a bicycle. So I went to a local store. It was kind of a hiking store, and I purchased a bike there. I still to this day have this bike. So think about this. This was 1999, and I still have that bike. It's green, and I like to name things. So the name of my bike is Gerda. So I still have Gerda. And I started biking everywhere. And now you think about the Midwest and the heat and the fact that it's not exactly bicycle friendly, but that's just the German in me. It was like, well, I'm not going to buy a car, so I'm just going to bike everywhere. And I realized that there was a very quick decision factor in the people that live there. I need to go somewhere, I'm just going to hop in the car and drive there, right? So that was maybe on one hand, there was more exercise, but on the other hand, there was a little bit more of an emphasis on convenience, whether that's taking the car, whether that's eating more convenient food, maybe portion sizes were larger, the fact that people maybe watched more TV. So there was also these other cultural factors right there that I observed. So the positive, exercise had a bigger role. The negative is that there were a lot of things that were maybe also preventing you from seeing all the positive benefits of the exercise as well. So coming from Germany, what I then brought along with me was a little bit more of the natural approach. So maybe instead of going to a store and immediately purchasing some type of over-the-counter medication to treat what you're dealing with, the Germans are maybe grabbing more natural things and reaching more for natural little wellnesses. So maybe instead of immediately buying over-the-counter headache medication, maybe we're doing something that could prevent that, like getting fresh air, or just laying down and reading a book, or maybe just massaging your neck or putting some peppermint oil on your temples. So that's kind of like the way that I'm looking at my life now, is that I'm looking at my own part, as you said, melting pot, and I'm embracing things from both cultures and kind of like trying what works for me.
That's awesome. And what works for you can be as an inspiration to other people, because we tend to just be in our own little bubble and we think that that's the best way, or that I can't find any other solutions because you've never been exposed to other things. So kudos to you, because you're bringing that inspiration to everyone that's around you. I was going to ask you about habits and just like what would be some tips to our listeners of just like starting to build that wellness within ourselves, without, I mean, you'd think that's typical, like, oh yeah, eat less, go to the gym, but maybe you have a different way of presenting it to us, or how can we embrace, because we all kind of know, but how do we get ourselves to start doing these things?
So my mantra is always, you got to kickstart your wellness. And the kickstart is truly just as the word says, you just need some trigger. And the trigger could be that maybe you're thinking, all right, as you just mentioned, we know we need to eat healthy, we need to work out. So maybe start with looking at your own eating habits. Are there some easy swaps you could do in your life? Are there maybe some new foods you could try? Are there maybe some 5-minute walks you could take? So I created actually a little checklist, and I call it the health habit checklist. And you can get this also for free here as listeners to this amazing podcast, which lets you tick off little health habits that you can change on a daily, on a weekly, on a monthly, on an annual basis. Because alone the fact that you have something there that you can check off is already triggering a creation of a healthier moment in your mind. Because at the beginning, it might be hard, but doing it the second, third, fifth time will eventually set in and create those habits. And the goal really is you start small, but you're going to see big results. So small moments lead to big results over time. It will accumulate to whatever your health outcome might be.
I love that the small moments lead to big results. It's almost like those small choices that's what counts. What have been some examples that you might have for yourself or from your clients that you've changed little habits? Do you have any stories that you could share with us?
I have lots of stories. And just to kind of bring this into perspective is usually clients come to me and really emphasize that they need to lose weight. They say, oh, I'm going on a cruise in October and here I am, I need to take off some pounds, or my daughter's getting married and I need to fit into this dress, or I'm doing a photo shoot and I need to tone my arms. So there is a certain deadline that triggers the fact that they need to change their wellness. And then there is this frantic, Christiane, help me get there. And I tell them that's amazing. That's that external motivation that we need. But internally, really, it's what's going to get you there. So I'm essentially letting them kind of like share with me what they embrace in their day, because healthy habits means that you don't need to cut out all cookies, cakes, ice cream, and whatever makes you happy. Maybe you're just weaving in some healthier habits. So let me give you an example. So for instance, I had a friend and she was the one that needed to lose weight because she wanted to go on a cruise. So what I did with her is I did a one-on-one coaching with her. And during the one-on-one coaching call, I showed her how to make a smoothie, so that in the morning, instead of reaching for a very high calorie breakfast, she can create something that kickstarts her day, using those words again, in a very healthy way. And then it's very quick, accessible. It's not even like looking at a lot of money, because a lot of frozen fruits and vegetables are much lower priced than fresh. And I showed her how she can actually even create the smoothie in the evening. So time has a cost associated with it too. And we basically did this together. And then I got text messages from her later, how amazing she felt by lunchtime, how much more energy she had because she changed her breakfast habit, and how much more she felt her digestion was working. Usually she was very bloated, very sluggish by lunchtime. And she kind of triggered this back to maybe starting her day off frantically searching for breakfast and, eating a protein bar while she was driving to work. So she was not really focusing on what she was eating. She was just kind of feeding her body and feeling that she's basically starting her day already stressed. And so that was a huge moment. And she ended up losing 15 pounds, which is, of course, something that was a positive side benefit of changing something as small as just your breakfast habit right there.
That is awesome. I love that. I love hearing these kind of stories because I think sometimes we feel like it has to be these huge changes, like you're saying, like these triggers, like I'm going on that cruise and I need to lose 15 pounds and leave them off for the rest of my life. But it doesn't have to be that way. It's more creating that health style, it's like shifting. That's why I never believed in the word diet, because it's just, so what, you're going to do it now and then you're going to go back to where you were or worse. Why not slowly create a health or a lifestyle, of these habits? So I love this. I'm going to keep asking you some questions about that. What are some different exercises for different bodies? Because I know that you've talked about that before, and I want to hear more in depth of, because we're not all the same. We all have different body shapes and types. What would you suggest?
I love that you're asking this question because I teach a lot of different fitness classes. And I always say my door is open, whether that's online fitness classes that I teach or whether that's in-person fitness classes that I teach. And think of different exercises as an appetizer plate where you're trying them and then you see which one works well for you. So for instance, the one that I started teaching first is weightlifting. So I teach a weightlifting class, and that's truly transformational for anybody. Weightlifting is so important to build your bone strength, but also to increase how you feel, confidence. So your posture changes, your bone strength changes, and it sounds so intimidating, but at the end of the day, you can start with like super small weights. You could even use cans at home or water bottles, or maybe even heavy sacks of rice or potatoes, anything to just get started. So weight-bearing exercises are very important, I would say, for any body shape or type. And it does not have to be long, complicated, or expensive. Just start small. And then some type of cardio movement that will get your heart rate up would be amazing too, whether that's maybe a fast-paced walk, whether that's cycling. It does not have to be running. I don't like running myself. It could just be something to where you're shifting a little bit of your regular heart rate into a quicker motion. I personally like stretching a lot because I tend to carry a lot of stress in my neck and in my back. And I start the day actually with stretching. And those stretches could emphasize certain parts of your body where you really carry that stress. So I have a lot of stretches that open up my chest muscles, that focus on my upper back, because again, that's where I carry my stress. I always emphasize on people, just starting small. I only stretch 5 minutes in the morning. It does not have to be elaborate or complicated. And when I travel, I also fold up a little yoga mat and take it with me, because especially when I travel, I get very stiff and then I need those stretches even more. So I would always embrace, especially for different body types and different levels, that you kind of try these out, the cardio, the weightlifting, the stretching, and you choose whatever in these particular areas works for you, because that's really what it comes down to. We are different, and it does not have to be one size fit all. Even in my weightlifting class, I just sometimes have people just lifting a barbell. They don't even put weights on the barbell. And I'm just so glad that they are there, that I want to give them a hug and say, you rock. You are absolutely amazing for doing this. And don't ever feel that people look at you, because actually in reality, nobody does. They just care about themselves. So you just lift that barbell, or maybe not, maybe just do squats without weight, because even your body weight is an amazing way to do weight-bearing exercises.
That is awesome. Thanks for those suggestions, and just the emphasis that we don't all have to do the same exercises. I think it's important. You've just kind of reaffirmed for myself, being in my 40s, and just the importance of weightlifting. I want to include that more in my routine, because where I've set up my habits ever since like last year, I've always been, like active. I have to be active, like the different phases of my life, different activities, different sports and stuff. In the last couple years, the goal is you have to move daily, Tanya. Like that's the goal, instead of like, you have to do 50 minutes of running. And like, I pulled it down and I'm just like, no, just move. Did you do a full hour walk? Did you do dancing at home? Did you go to the gym and lifted weights or whatever? So thank you for sharing that. What I do realize that I want to incorporate with the habits is adding more weightlifting, because in the 40s, you know, like I've read, don't we start losing muscle mass like late 30s, even 40s, like how important it is to continue to lift some sort of weight, whether it's your body weight, like you're saying, or resistance, right? Am I right with that or not?
You're completely right. So we're losing bone density. And of course, good nutrition will help too. So maybe making sure you got your vitamin D, you're eating your protein, so you're building the muscle mass.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, moving your body, weight-bearing exercises, super important too. And it comes also down to your posture, because your posture will increase how you breathe, how you present yourself to the world. And of course, it will also change the pain that you feel on a daily basis. If you have good posture, you might be reducing neck or back strains in any way. And again, it doesn't have to be expensive, complicated, or long. It could maybe even be that you park a little further away
Yes.
to work and you're going up those stairs and your backpack is your weight, right? You're carrying maybe a backpack or a work bag.
Mm-hmm.
And you buy an economic one. That's important. Don't buy something that will hurt your shoulders. And you're going up the stairs, you get your cardio, you're carrying your backpack, so that's your weightlifting right there. And of course, maybe you're walking by some beautiful trees, some buildings, so you get a little bit of that mind shift that I call, that enhances also the positive thinking. So it does not have to be even a separate activity. You could just add it on to a habit that you already do. So kind of habit stacking, I call it, is totally easy and very doable. And
that is wonderful, because I was going to ask you about that. You're a mom and you're doing all these things. You're all about the hustle. What are some tips for those of us that are listening that might say, like, well, I don't have the time. I don't have the time to go to the gym. I don't have the time to cook healthy meals all the time and to make these smoothies, you know. What are some tips that you could give the busy parents or the busy people? It doesn't even have to be parents or moms, but that's the world I move in right now. So that's why I'm saying moms, you know, because that's who I interact with the most. What are some tips you can give us to still keep those habits?
Great question, Tanya. So I give a lot of free tips in my health habits checklist. It's called Health Habits Checklist to Optimize Your Wellness. So download that free PDF and maybe print it out and hang it somewhere so you can some of the habits.
We'll put it in the show notes to make sure, so that anyone that wants to get the healthy habits checklist from Christiane, just check the show notes.
So I'm encouraging you to take a look at that and maybe just elaborating on a couple of success stories from my students that maybe use that. So I am all about making it easy, and I'm all about making it accessible, and I'm all about making it inexpensive. Let's use that word, right? So it does not have to be a complete overhaul of your pantry right there. And at the same time, it doesn't even have to be a complete overhaul of your day. So the success stories that I've been seeing is, first, take a look at your calendar. You actually might need to schedule your me time into your day. Because if you think about it, you wake up and you're like, oh, great, this is a good day to get started. And then you go to bed and you're like, maybe not today. We are all hustlers. Our day just slips between our fingers. It's like looking at your children. You're like, hold on, did they just grow? What happened, right? So this is how the day goes. And we don't want to create that continuous same old. To change something, you actually have to make it visible, whether it's a paper calendar, an electronic calendar, creating reminders on your phone. You need to make that change. And that change starts with writing it down and making it part of your day. If you don't make it part of your day or your week, it will probably not happen, right? So put it right there. And again, it could be stacking a habit on top of another habit. So I've seen people that scheduled little 5-minute stretches between Zoom calls. And in my Journey to Wellness program, I actually have 5-minute videos that they just follow along. I have amazing arms, for instance, where they do an arm video in between their Zoom calls. Or I have Boost Your Booty, so where they're working their glutes, which actually the glutes are some of the underworked areas in your body because we sit so much, right? It's also your largest muscle groups. Or I have amazing apps, so working your abdominal muscles right there. So they use those little 5-minute videos in between their Zoom calls, but they schedule that. So they don't just scroll through their phone between Zoom calls, because we all have 5 minutes. If you don't have 5 minutes in your life, you have a serious problem, right? Because I'm sure you're spending it on something else right now. And those are some easy things you can do. You need to schedule it. Zoom call. Oh, there's me time. That's when I do the workout video right there. And then I come back to another Zoom call and I'm feeling energized and strong. And I know I can do this.
I love it. Thank you for those tips. I think that's so important because we underestimate those little moments and time that we can take advantage of. Those are wonderful tips. Thank you for that. And we'll make sure to put that in the show notes. I was going to ask you, where can people find you, Christiane? Like, would that be a good place that they can come into your world and your community?
Yeah. So if you want to get that amazing checklist, click on the show notes and you go to the checklist. I have a very active newsletter where I share recipes. I share my podcast episodes that I record with my guests, which also have wellness tips right there. It's called Happy Healthy Hustle. And of course, I share new products that I'm finding. So I'm a professor, so I always share little things that you might not have heard about that might help you increase your own wellness. I lead a very active Journey to Wellness program, which includes coaching as well. And I would encourage you to be part of it. It's a wonderful community of people that reach their own wellness goals called Journey to Wellness. And you can find more about that on my website, which is called Hello Happy Nest, all in one word. So hellohappynest.com, where you can also get the recipes. You can find more freebies. And of course, you can get in touch with me.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And we'll have all of this in the show notes in case you're exercising or doing your walk while you're listening to this podcast. Well, thank you so much, Christiane. I have one last question that I like asking my guest, which is, what would be one thing that you can leave our listeners with that they can live a life with more courage?
Just do it. That's what I always say. If you don't try and you don't do it, you will never know.
That is awesome. Thank you so much. I so appreciate your time with us today and for all these tips that you've given us and the work that you're putting out there into the world. Thank you so much, Christiane.
Thanks for having me today as a guest. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to hearing from the audience.
I am so grateful that you joined me today. If you enjoyed it, there's one thing I'd like you to do. Click on the follow button so you don't miss a single episode. Leave me a rating and a review, and please share. As my way to thank you, email us a screen grab of your review at the email in the show notes, and we will send you a free Crafting Your Future guided visualization, which is so simple to do with outstanding results. It will empower you and give you the confidence to attract and create the life you've always desired. See you in our next episode.